Look what I got. This is the Kenwood / Viking / E.F. Johnson, whatever you want to call it, VP8000. This is their competitor to the Motorola APX8000, and it is a all-band, analog, and P25 radio. This is the first radio that I've ever bought brand new. This is straight from the factory. It's a dealer demo unit, so this was one of the initial batch of VP8000s that went to the market, and I have one. Now you may be asking yourself, well, aren't you a Motorola fanboy? And generally the answer is yes, but I'm also a realist, and when a radio comes along that checks all my boxes, I'm not going to turn it down. And this radio so far is checking all my boxes and even more boxes that I didn't know existed. So I would hope this is obvious, but I will mention it anyway. I paid for this radio. This was not given to me by Kenwood. This is not any type of promotional item for review. I bought this radio. I own it. It is mine. And I put a pre-order in on it like 6 months ago, and it finally just got here. They finally started shipping the first batch of radios. Previously to this radio, I had been running the Motorola APX8000, which is kind of the gold standard for a all-band commercial radio. This does VHF, UHF, 700, 800, P25, conventional analog, and trunked. And basically, up until recently, if you were looking for a rock-solid all-band commercial rugged HT, this was... well, I don't want to say the best option because the Harris XL200 is also a very attractive radio, but this one is kind of the, well, it's definitely the most expensive one you could buy. I fortunately got it for a really good deal, but people love these things, and the Apex line has been around forever. They work fantastically. Everybody loves them, and Motorola charges a premium because they know it. So what are the differences? Well, obviously, the VP8000 is a little bit bigger. From the side, you can tell it's definitely a lot thicker. And interestingly, though, it is lighter. It is probably maybe 2/3 as heavy as the Apex. Now, talking about the features on the Kenwood for a second, it is also a all-band radio, VHF, UHF, 7/800. Also does analog, conventional P25 and trunk P25. Both have top displays. The VP8000 has a color top display versus the Apex. It is a LCD display. But otherwise, they're very, very similar radios. And you may be wondering, well, if they're so similar, why did you get this one instead of sticking with this one? And, well, there's two answers to that question. The first one is, I like shiny new toys. The second answer is... this one will do DMR. Not yet, but E.F. Johnson has confirmed that it will do DMR sometime within the next year. The Apex has been rumored for years that it will do DMR. There's a fabled firmware hiding somewhere in Schoenberg that will do DMR on the Apex line, but that's going to never see the light of day, and Motorola really wants you to buy the Turbo line if you want DMR. They will never put DMR in a public safety grade radio. E.F. Johnson / Kenwood, on the other hand, they have their very popular NX5000 line. I have two of those in my truck. The NX5700, which is a VHF brick, the NX5800, which is a UHF brick. Those will do DMR and P25, and of course analog, all in the same unit, and they can be combined together into a multi-brick setup controlled from a single control head. It's a really, really slick setup, and I'll probably do a video about that sometime just to showcase it a little bit. But back to the topic at hand. If E.F. Johnson comes through, this will be the first all-band handheld radio to support both P25 and DMR, the two most popular digital radio standards. And that eliminates pretty much every other handheld radio I need to carry. I consolidated most of my handhelds into the APX8000. I used to have a couple monoband Motorola XTS radios. This one does the work of essentially 3 radios. This one, if it does DMR, will get rid of my XPR series handheld for DMR, and I will only need to carry one radio around, and it will do everything I need it to do. So that was the big selling point. The other big selling point was as a dealer demo unit, these were on a special sale. They were selling it for essentially half price of what one of these radios will be going for when it actually hits the market for real. So that was another big reason I wanted to jump on board. And I've been using this radio for 3 or 4 days now, and so far I am sold. It is a fantastic radio, and I am extremely pleased with the purchase. So now that I've gotten my hands on the radio and been able to play with it for a little bit, I figured I'd make a video just to kind of showcase it a little bit, show some people who might have been curious what it's all about, and give the internet some more views of these things, because they're just now, like I said, just starting to get out into the wild. You'll notice I do have on there a Motorola XPR series UHF stubby antenna. I have not bought the Kenwood stubby antenna. I just had this lying around. The radio from the factory comes with a all-band whip, similar to the Apex all-band antenna. It's almost the same size, and it's just a little too bulky, and most of the time handheld I'm operating UHF, at least when I'm indoors. So the VHF antenna only goes on when I need VHF. I really like the battery system on these radios. This is the same battery in the NX5000 portable series and also the VP8000 portable series. It's a real standard Kenwood battery. And this radio, you'll notice it's labeled Kenwood. It's technically an E.F. Johnson Viking product, but all the labeling says Kenwood. And at this point in time, E.F. Johnson is essentially Kenwood. Most of their engineering is still in Texas, but all of the manufacturing and production is now over in Japan with the rest of JVC Kenwood's operations. But back to the battery, it has a mechanism I've never seen before in a radio. This latch system here is a two-stage latch. So to release the battery, you have to pull down on this locking bail here, and then you can push this in, and the battery hinges off this way. It's a real slick system and super secure. That thing's not going to come out of there unless you throw it on the ground. In case you're curious, the Apex style batteries are just double clips on the bottom here, so you squeeze on both sides and the battery comes out. That's relatively secure as well. I've never had a battery pop out of the Apex, and I have dropped this thing many times. That is another big thing to speak to Motorola's credit. I dropped this thing into the engine room of a ship going down the Mississippi River, and it doesn't even have a scratch on it. It actually shattered the plastic holster that it was being held in, but the radio is totally fine, still works 100%, no issues whatsoever. I'm also running a 3D printed knob on there. Just because the OEM channel knob's real thin, and it's kind of hard to get a good grip on it sometimes. This one's a lot more firm. I just CAD'd and 3D printed that up one afternoon, and it worked great, so I never felt the need to change it or update it or anything. I might try and find those files and put that out there on printables or something just so other people have it if they need it. But back to the new shiny toy. The Kenwood, I will say I haven't dropped it yet, and I don't plan on dropping it, but it does feel a little bit lighter duty than the Apex. It definitely doesn't feel as solid. There's no movement. You know, I can try and twist that or bend that. It's not moving at all. It does have a metal chassis just like the Apex, but I don't know. There's something about it that just feels a little more plasticky. I don't know how to describe it. I'm sure it's just as rugged because Viking has the VP8000, which is essentially almost the same radio, and I've heard no complaints about durability with those. So I would imagine this is going to be the same, but I don't know. It's just something about it. Maybe it's just because it's lighter. Like I said, the Apex is heavier despite being smaller. This thing's a little bit lighter, and maybe I'll just have to get used to the new lighter weight of the thing. The belt clip on these, it is attached to the chassis, whereas in a lot of Motorola radios, the belt clip is attached to the battery. There's pros and cons to that. It is screwed in. Some Motorola radios, you can just pull a tab back and slide the belt clip out if you need to fit it into a holster or anything. If I need to put this into a holster of any kind, I'll have to actually remove the belt clip, which is not, it's not something you can easily do in the field without a screwdriver. So that's one thing I'm not a big fan of, but I'm going to play around with a couple different holster offerings and see what I end up liking and see how much that actually bothers me. So let's put the battery back in and show you around the radio a little bit more. Please pay no attention to that boot screen. Actually, let's do a boot time comparison between the two radios here, because I actually haven't done this yet. I'm kind of curious. Let's see who wins. Okay. Apex definitely wins for boot time, but it's only a couple seconds more, and this one's so quick to boot as it is. Not a big issue. I mean, I've had radios in the past that take, almost 30 seconds to boot, which is ridiculous. But yeah, these both boot quick enough for my uses, so I can't complain about that at all. Like I said earlier, the radio has two screens, just like the Apex, except in this case, both of the screens are color LCDs, as opposed to the Apex's top, monochromatic LCD. Display quality is very good. It's a little bit higher resolution, I think, than the Apex. It's definitely bigger. You have a screen size comparison here. The Apex is a square. This is a 4:3 resolution screen. This is actually 240 by 180. I know that because of making the custom boot screen. I don't know off the top of my hand what the resolution is on the Apex, and obviously the top display is much more resolution than the Apex top display is. It also has a couple more controls than the Apex does. On the top here, we actually have an ABC-D switch, as opposed to the ABC switch on the Motorola. We also have a crypto switch here, secure clear. All these switches are programmable. You don't have to use them the way I'm using them. I have ABC-D set to zone, this switch set to crypto, secure clear. The emergency button I just have to turn the backlight on and off. You can also adjust the backlight brightness by pressing and holding, and then you can go through 3 different backlight settings there. I go with the mid one typically, press and hold again to exit. On the side here, same button setup as a Motorola. You have your PTT button, the big one, and 1 button on top, 2 buttons on the bottom, and a full-size keypad on the front. Everything on here is programmable and customizable. You can make any one of these buttons do any function you want it to. Super handy, and actually a little bit more flexible than the Apex is. Some of the buttons on the Apex you cannot change the function of, like the directional pad there and the side function buttons. On this, you can make any button do anything you want, even if it doesn't make any sense at all. This radio does have a menu system, unlike the Apex. You can customize what options you have in the menu here. It also, just like the Apex, does have soft buttons up top here. It only has 2 soft buttons compared to the Apex's 3 soft buttons up here. So slightly less flexible in that regard, but same story. You can scroll left and right to scroll through all your soft buttons, and you have just as many options. Button-wise, you can do any number of crazy, weird, and wild things in your programming. Everything in this radio is programmable, and everything is customizable, which I really, really like. This radio does have front panel programming, just like the Apex. You can actually change a little bit more than the Apex. You can actually change scan timers, things of that nature, timeout timers for transmit. You can modify zones. You can modify all the different channel parameters just like you can on the Apex front panel programming. There are some issues I've noticed. It doesn't let you program upper end UHF business band frequencies for some reason. I'm trying to confirm with my dealer whether or not that's actually supposed to be how it works, or if that's just a bug, or if I'm doing something wrong. These are, like I said at the beginning, still very new radios, so there's going to be some bugs in the firmware, and everybody is kind of still learning how they work together. As far as audio quality goes, I would say the speaker is slightly tinnier than the Apex. That may just come down to tuning the audio profiles a little bit more. Mic quality is just as good. The internal microphone profiles, the AGC and everything, just as good as the Apex. I notice almost no difference in the audio quality. I'm not an audio snob, so I'm sure there's some people out there who think this audio sounds terrible. I'm sure there's some people out here who think this audio sounds terrible. Both radios have noise reduction, intelligent DSP processing to eliminate background noise, things like that. The Apex does have a very interesting thing. It actually has 3 mics, 2 in the front, 1 in the back, and it uses those to do some super crazy DSP stuff to do noise cancellation. I don't know if the Kenwood has something similar to that. It might not. But like I said, for my uses, I have noticed essentially no difference between the 2 radios in terms of audio quality or performance. By far, the biggest difference that I have noticed between these 2 radios is programming. The E.F. Johnson Armada programming software is the most intuitive programming software I've ever used. It is fantastic, super fast, super easy to use. The help files are fantastic. It teaches you how to do basically everything in the radio. Apex CPS is extremely slow, not as slow as KPGD1N for the NX5000 series, but it's still pretty bad. Not very intuitive at all. You have to put in channel parameters in like 4 different places. It's just real clunky. I've tolerated Apex CPS for the past 4 or 5 years owning Apex radios, but I really, it is night and day compared to Armada for the EF Johnson radios, and that alone almost makes this upgrade totally worth it, not to mention all the other cool things about this radio. And what are some of those other cool things? Well, the big one that I've been using a ton recently is Wi-Fi programming. So the radio has Bluetooth and Wi-Fi built in, and you can program the radio wirelessly from anywhere as long as you're connected to the same network it is. So the Apex does have something similar. It does have a radio management server which you can run over Wi-Fi. This Apex does have Bluetooth and Wi-Fi as well. Bluetooth programming works about the same on both radios, so I'm not really going to give any of them the advantage in that area, but Wi-Fi programming is so much easier on the Kenwood. The Apex, you have to set up a radio management server, and you have to basically get involved in the entire Motorola radio management tool chain, versus you just turn this radio on, you connect it to the same network your computer is on running Armada, the radio shows up in Armada, and boom, you can program it. It's as simple as that. I was blown away how easy it was to set up. I had to do no configuration. It just worked. And like I said, the ease of programming with this radio is worth it to me, even if it wasn't a better radio in a couple other regards. So there you go. I'm going to do another video here, maybe showcasing a little bit of the RF performance, maybe comparing it to the Apex, doing spurious emissions testing, power output testing, sensitivity testing, things like that. But I just wanted to get this video out there to show off my new fancy toy and brag a little bit about it, and also get you guys on the internet a little more interested in it, because I think it's a real cool radio, and if you're able to pick one up, absolutely do. They are very cool radios, and I'm excited to see how they continue to get developed as they add more features like DMR to the firmware.